It's a development agreement to do with a limited company and wanting to set up business in our industrial park in Tusket, I believe. And we have no planner here tonight, so you're going to take his place.
I am. I'm going to do my best. So I just want to give a little bit of history on why this is a development agreement. There are some people concerned, want to hear more about it, so I'm going to give a little bit of a background. A development agreement is basically a legal agreement between the municipality and a company in order to operate a business. It's not everywhere in the municipality that you require a development agreement. Because this is considered a heavy industry, and that's as defined by our rules. It's not necessarily what everybody thinks heavy industry might be, but it's basically taking, you know, raw material and changing it into something else. It's basically the layman's definition of how the heavy industry applies to what's happening in this particular case. Because it's located in the business park in Tusket, we require that by development agreement, which means they can't just automatically go there and do it. There's a reason why we did that. That wasn't always the case. We opened a residential park not far away from the business park, and as a consequence, we understood that there might be occasions where an automatic heavy industry going into the business park could pose some issues around nuisance, whatever that nuisance may be, to some of the residents, which we've purposely constructed a residential zone, particularly to have them be close to the river in nice residential homes. So because of the potential conflict that can occur, we put this contract in between. And so, so basically, I'm going to do my best to describe the nature of the business. The business owner would be much better at describing this than I would. I don't see that the business owner's here. He could show up.
If I may, I spoke with the business owner today, and I wasn't quite clear whether he understood it was tonight or not. He seemed to not know whether that was his fault or ours, but he did mention that he has people from overseas due to the nature of his business, and he couldn't make it one way or another.
Okay.
And sending his regrets.
Okay, and it's not necessary that he attend, but he would do a much better job at explaining what this is than I would.
Well, we've all heard it, but...
Yeah, so I do want to go over it a little bit. And so what this agreement is basically, the agreement says, look, we will allow this business in the business park of Tusket, but only under certain conditions. And so as the owner of this business, this owner has to continuously abide by these conditions. So the concerns that we would have in this kind of industry, and any sort of heavy industry in the business park, is noise. If it's a very noisy, you know, working 24/7 operation, that's not an acceptable way to do business there because it's the close proximity to homes. The other would be smell. So, you know, any noxious, toxic, or even just smelly whatever's coming out of this industrial use, again, has to be managed by the owner. So, in this particular instance, the business that he is proposing is a nutraceutical business, and essentially it is bringing. I'm just going to the right page here. Forgive me. It is basically bringing a, here we are, it's, oh, I just messed it up.
Take your time.
All right, so the description of the process is that there will be refrigerated space that will be used to store raw material until it's processed. The raw material is the unused portion of a sea cucumber operation, which is currently located in Wedgeport. So it's expected additional separate freezer storage building for storage of incoming raw materials on the site may be needed as the business grows, but right now that's not part of their plan. However, they have to tell us what their future plans are because we have to build that into an agreement. It's intended, excuse me, to utilize the current waste materials from the Ocean Pride Sea Cucumber facility in Wedgeport with the goal of utilizing all of the Ocean Pride products which are harvested from the sea, and also have the potential for utilizing raw material products from the sea from other processors to produce nutraceutical dietary supplements and related products. The process which follows, there's a boiler process, involves drying the raw material to produce a final dry powder nutraceutical product. The process involves venting to the exterior of the building, so which includes the potential for applying standard odor mitigation solutions if warranted. So what the company is saying is this process needs to be vented from the building, and that may produce a smell, and if it does, they have to mitigate that. They have to put in equipment, whatever, to reduce or eliminate that smell. The final products are then packaged in containers and stored in barrels or bins for shipping to a third party off-site, and the encapsulated goods may be returned to Ocean Pride for packaging and export. In terms of waste, there's minimal, it's intended to have minimal waste in the process. Oops. And water and cleaning solutions would be daily cleaning. There would be a daily cleaning, and the estimated wastewater daily output is 1,000 USG per day. Processed waste means loss of income, so to optimize production, waste is minimized. It is actually taking a waste and generating something else out of the waste. In essence, it is not a wet operation. It is intended that all frozen raw material, except for what collects on the surface of the machinery and pipes during flow, will be collected and sent out in barrel or large container. So it is a dry process. Local traffic will be minimal. Frozen raw materials are received in large quantities sporadically, and any shipping will be done for bulk products on domestic carriers, and all of it would take place within the normal business hours during the work week. So the concern of having excess noise or traffic on the weekend, that's not part of the business. At the onset, it is estimated a reasonable level of production volume would require operating for 72 hours straight to the middle part of the week. This would limit wash down and cleanup. The forecast will take approximately 2 years to achieve that level of production. Until then, it's expected the operation will run 1 day of production per week. Full future production may involve full working weeks. So the concerns that were raised by the planner and the staff on your behalf include smell and noise and disruption and cleanliness of the property. So inside the contract, the company is required to do the following. The property owner shall make every reasonable effort to minimize and mitigate odors emanating from the facility as a result of the production processes, utilizing commercial odor mitigation solutions such as air scrubbers and thermal oxidizers if warranted. The building structure shall be well insulated for sound containment, and additional sound barriers to mitigate noise produced by the high pressure boilers and related machinery shall be installed if warranted. Now, the location of this building would be surrounded by a fair amount of trees. It is somewhat segregated, although as the crow flies, there is one residential home not far from that location. There's also, which was recently rezoned, if you recall. That would have been off of a property that was owned by Delmar, I believe. Then there's a Delmar containment or storage facility that's being constructed right now, which is also commercial. And then to the south, there would be the brewery, which is not far away as the crow flies either. Outside of that, if you look on the other side, most of the residential homes would be to the west and down from that location quite a bit of ways. And then there would be the Garian storage, which would be on the opposite end coming into that location. So the thing is this contract addresses that issue and asks that the owner deal with it. And if there are issues, the owner has to deal with it. and the contract is a binding contract. So of course they have to hook up to our sewer, and the appearance of property has to maintain all structures in good repair, usable state, maintain the property in neat and presentable condition, including all structures, driveways, parking areas, loading spaces. This is certainly not a fly-by-night organization. Is a well-established business person in the community, and I don't think it's in anybody's interest that the property become in disrepair. This was less of a concern, but obviously it's something that we want to make sure is protected, that the people are protected, so they don't have to drive by something that's unsightly every day. We were less concerned about their hours of operation, particularly if it's all internally contained. So if it's all inside a business, you know, it's like a lot of businesses can work 24/7, you don't hear a thing. Now again, if you do hear a thing, they have to address that, okay? Hours of operation, they do confirm that it periodically will involve continuous 24-hour activity, and they'll mitigate and minimize noise and vibration resulting from the processing activities. We also have a noise bylaw that they'd have to adhere to, so it's not just this contract, it's also the noise bylaw. But the contract is stronger in terms of enforcement. And then any changes they have to disclose to us. And again, we repeat that the long-term storage of unfrozen raw materials on the property and industrial processing activities, which involves emissions of noise or smell, are substantive matters. They are significant matters they have to maintain. So those would be the areas where I think we collectively had concerns, and we have people here that probably share those concerns, which, you know, if I was not far away, I would have those concerns as well. And I would just, I guess, assure all of us here in this room that the company is required to do the things that I've described by contract. And if it's not done, it can be revisited. So it is a different arrangement than we're accustomed to. We haven't had too many development agreement developments in Argyle. There's significant advantages of doing it this way because we can control some of the things even after they qualify to construct on that location. So unless there were any questions or comments or concerns, I'll do my best to answer what I know about the business, and I think some of you know, I think you know probably more about the business than I do. And
I can elaborate a bit if you
no,
like.
that's the end of what I had.
Yes.
I guess we have a few interested individuals at the public hearing here, so I'll try to assume the questions you guys have in your heads and maybe elaborate just a little bit on what I know. There's many things I don't know because this is sort of a new endeavor. So just like yourselves, we were concerned at first. However, as councillors, we want to be as welcoming as possible for new business. You know, you want growth in the community. You don't want to discourage new business, especially something like this. It's unorthodox. It's thinking outside the box. So we were excited at first. However, we likely share the same concerns you do as well, because you want to be respectful to property owners in the area. This company currently operates a fish processing plant in my district, which, if you use that as an example, doesn't look well. It's in a zoned area where fish plant use has always been allowed, or I guess not always, but for a long period of time. So we don't have any issues in our area. However, the product that they're processing is not a pleasant odor. However, the end product, the meat, the edible part, there's no issues. It's the process when these cucumbers, as they're called, sea cucumbers, are burst open. There's a lot of acidity in the juices, and it can be unpleasant to some people. Some people have, not severe, I just mean some people have a slight allergy to it and they can't work in the plant. And there's odor issues with the byproduct. So at first glance, when I heard that this would be taking place in our business park, I had great concern for the local businesses and the residents in the area. However, after hearing the end product is a pharmaceutical product, so clearly there's no issues there. That won't be, noise-wise, traffic-wise, anything like that won't be any different than any of the other industrial businesses happening in the area like DFO or Garion or Delmar or whatnot. So no concern there. Mainly noises shouldn't be different. They're boiling and curing and making a powdered product from what I can tell. However, my concern was the effluent product that comes out from the plant in Wedgeport is like I mentioned, is not a pleasant odor. So my concern was, how does that product get shipped from Wedgeport to the business park? Very happy to hear that it comes frozen. So from what I'm told, once it's frozen in a block, there's virtually, you wouldn't know what's in there, right? Once it's in a block and it's frozen and it's boxed and shipped onto a truck, it'd be no different than having any other truck in the area. However, you do have the venting. You do have the venting of the cooking product. However, anything that's cooked needs to be vented, right? So it's kind of scary. I'm picturing, you know, these big boilers boiling, you know, a stinky product and worrying about what comes out. But in reality, when you really look into these businesses that do these types of things, it's just a safety procedure for venting for people that work there. So I believe they're currently doing testing in Truro. The preliminary testing shows awesome results. From what I understand, virtually no odor, none. When you think restaurants have to vent outside, anyone boiling lobster, any plant like that. So I can only repeat what I've been told. I'm not making any guarantees. However, unless you guys want to vocalize any concerns tonight that you may have that I'm not touching on, by all means, or if you're not comfortable speaking out tonight, you can always contact any counselor or myself, because I'm often in contact with the business owner that's looking to do this endeavor. He, as Alain mentioned, he's a reputable business owner, very level-headed gentleman, easy to talk with, and likely has foreseen all these concerns long before we even talked about them. So if I may give him the benefit of the doubt, I believe he'll have all his, you know, T's crossed and I's dotted before he even comes to this. However, there's always a worry. So that's why we have these development agreements. And but like I mentioned, the preliminary testing for the odor looks real well. So.
Yes.
I guess my concern is, you touched on it a lot, and it is the odor. At the brewery we have some odor ourselves. It's a mold, it's, baking kind of odors, not really unpleasant, but, we do have a large patio space, people are sitting out, so it is the odor, and I guess in the contract here, the words like effort to minimize isn't really, you can put things in that do minimize it, but it's still affecting everybody. Do you know what I mean? Like, for instance, the mink ranch that we have and a nearby community, they've done things to minimize it, but that odor still spreads. So is there any way to, a more definitive wording that, yeah, it's loosely termed, effort to minimize and mitigate, which is great, but it's not really giving us a guarantee that it's going to be satisfactory, controlled to a satisfactory limit.
It's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only speak from our perspective. Certainly, we would make, from staff's perspective, if we can make that wording stronger, and again, keeping this in mind, that this is a bi-party agreement.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for the owner, but I think that the owner has been very, very good the whole time, and so I think that I don't think he would want that kind of nuisance to detriment the area, and nor his reputation as a business person. I think that would be certainly the choice of location, ironically, was in some way influenced by some of the businesses that were going in there, i.e. one of your own. And so I think he wants to be, he wants to work closely to make sure that these things work the way that they do, that they should. So I can absolutely bring that to him and say, look, we want to strengthen the language. This is why we have public hearings. This is why. So the public was concerned, and we want to. I don't think there's any wording that we can say that it will absolutely eliminate any smell whatsoever. That's like an impossible thing. But I think we will certainly effort a stronger language around the smell piece, if that is what your biggest concern is. And I'm seeing some nods, so.
On this side too? Is that your main concern?
Yeah, big time. And I guess if warranted, but who decides
Yeah.
on the smell, right?
And then once it's constructed, how do you like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Once it's up and they've spent all this money and it's in operation and then we come to find out that it is an issue, what's gonna be the steps into?
That's a concern we share as well, and that's why we have these public hearings. The questions you guys have might not be the same ones we have, so it's to get perspective. You may know something about your area that we don't, right? I don't live there. But we want to get these things figured out before shovel hits the ground, right?
Yeah.
Because, God forbid, we may stop this, right? If you know, if there was proven fact that it would stink up the whole place, we don't want it there either, right? Or at least, I can't speak for everyone, at least I would, my 1/9 of the vote. So
So the testings that they're doing in Truro, is this on a similar plant, or what's happening in Truro, like what are these studies in Truro?
I guess I can't speak, I don't know a whole lot about what's happening, and I apologize for not knowing. I really wish the owner was here, he could elaborate. And to answer your question, if you guys want to contact me after the hearing, maybe even a series of questions that I can forward to the business owner anonymously or whatnot, be it choice or not, and get some feedback and responses and some elaboration, you know, it may help mitigate some of the conversation. However, at the end of the day, I'm not an expert in this. I share the same concerns, and hopefully, as you mentioned, we can kind of iron the issues out prior to building, and so that we don't have to, down the road, fix a problem, right?
Why Tusket, if their product is coming from which floor?
I think I can answer that.
Yeah.
I think it's a good question. It has to do with transportation. They're shipping it out towards Halifax, so it made sense on the way. I think they were attracted to the fact that there was a business park that looked a bit lively and that had some business, you know, ventures happening. I think that was influential in his choice to select that location. I think he felt like it was fairly secluded as well as center, if you can be both, right? I guess you know that because that's where you live, right? You're secluded there, but you're in the center of a lot of things. So I think those things all factored in, and I think, you know, one of the things that he wanted to do was make sure that it did stay in this area as opposed to going, like, because it could have gone to Queens, it could have gone anywhere on the way, right? So I think he wanted to certainly keep the investment in the area, and I know that because he said that to me directly. Easy access to the highway, right? Yeah, I mean, those were all major factors in his decision for sure. What I've heard the concerns, and I just want to repeat them so that we're all aware. Like, it's not just that if warranted piece, it's who gets to measure, right? So who gets to decide, right? So is it some random guy that just sniffs every 10 seconds or once a week, or, you know, how do the residents in fact influence or input into that equation? So I think that's what I've heard without hearing it exactly that way, and so that's your concern, like, how do we get involved? So okay, so public hearing. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, that's all I wanted. Go ahead. Alan.
There is a language that can be used to describe someone acting reasonably in the circumstances. That would be it would be a test, I would imagine, that would enter there. Exactly what language I would recommend, based on the comments, is not clear yet, but just something that's crossed my mind is a reasonable person test in the circumstances. A person acting reasonably in the circumstances, what would that be? Or, you know, and then some industry standards or some reasonable test standards would have to be discussed with the owner, and the language would have to be discussed. But there is language to that effect that we can insert. Just wanting to make sure that you are aware of that. And I will probably be asked to look at it.
You will.
At least look at it, if not draft it. So,
you will probably be asked to do both. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
So just wanting to tell you that there are tests. There is language that can be used in order to determine what kind of test could be inserted there. but it would be a person, I'm leaning towards a person acting reasonably in the circumstances.
Is there like a smelling test that you could
Well-
input, like, it needs to meet the standard, like, point whatever smell?
It's possible. It's not as easy as noise, right? You could just get a decibel meter and go boop, and then you could see. I don't know what the scientific answer is to that question. I mean, clearly there's a lot of these things out there that could be used in these cases.
But what may be acceptable in the industry may not be acceptable to you. So that's why I think a somewhat tighter term, but leaving it somewhat broad as well, to say a person acting reasonably in the circumstances would be preferable, bearing in mind, and I don't want to be a small p politician, that's your job, your counselors, but bearing in mind the composition of the structures and their uses. There's mixture of residential and industrial in that area, so we have to be careful in making sure that there is a language that will adhere to what would be reasonable in the circumstances, not only for the industry, but for the residents as well, and the users of the industrial park, other users of the industrial park.
Yes, councillors involved.
That was a great question, actually, because I assumed there was a sniff test, just like a noise, like a decimeter or whatnot.
I can't say for sure whether there is.
Neither can I, of course. But
And realistically, like with other sectors that we deal with, like with wastewater and things like that, I guess people in those sectors would likely know, and we've never talked about it, so it makes sense that there isn't, which is concerning. However, I forgot to mention, and just remembered, I've been told that the product that comes in has to be collected and transported by food grade policy. So when I was initially picturing like fish guts, you know, you always go to the worst picture in your mind. It's more food grade, right? So I guess I'm talking about something I don't know. We don't know what it's going to smell like till I actually stand there and realistically, you know, experience it for yourself.
this operation would presumably be regulated by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency.
Correct.
And that would be one of the regulatory bodies involved.
One of the residents
That's what I was
familiar
getting
with
at, yeah.
Yeah, and again,
And yourselves too.
the owner would have that information, which I think it's absolutely important. It's critical that we get a little bit more information from the owner to you directly as opposed to us, so that you can decide for yourselves whether those regulations are helpful. Like, you know, it doesn't say much that it's, you know, it's the CFIB that regulates. Well, okay, well,
Yeah, that's
how does that
sufficient.
impact you, right? Like, so what are the standards that they have to meet, right? So we can certainly get that information for you. And again, I'm gonna say this more than once. You know, the business person does not want to create nuisances. He wants to be in a situation where he can, you know, nutraceutical happily ever after in Tusket, right? So I think that certainly, you know, your points are very, 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 very valid and heard, at least by staff and I'm sure by council.
I think he wanted a question and then
Is
Kathy.
there a building anywhere in Nova Scotia that does a similar thing?
Right.
Like
That's my
Canada?
question.
My question, John.
Anywhere?
I can,
Is there, oh, sorry, go ahead.
There's one, maybe.
large scale, we all remember, well, the older ones here, me and another counselor, East Pumlico, when they used to have the fish meal plants, I mean, that was horrible.
That was rank.
I work for Camo Seafoods part-time. They have a large scale fish meal plant where they could cook hundreds of tons a day when they have the product. And you virtually can't smell nothing there. And all the prevailing winds are blow into the community from the west, northwest, southwest. You know where Clarence's store is, and you're familiar with Soniaville. And I've never heard a complaint. So there's technology out there for large-scale operations. This will be a much smaller, but I assume the technology's there for them too.
Yeah.
But, because when I started working there a few years ago, I couldn't believe that was a fish meal plant there in the middle of the community. Yeah. But me and Kathy remember what it used to be like under the old technology. It just was horrible.
There is there is another similar, I would say, company out in close to Queens. I believe the name's Kenny and Ross, and they do similar.
That's Shelburne.
Shelburne, yeah, it is in Shelburne, yeah. Okay, yeah, Clyde or somewhere between Clyde. Anyway,
Port Saxon.
Port Saxon, that's where. Okay, anyway, they do similar, but not the same.
How so?
They reduce, they use fish products for medicinal and
Glue.
stuff like toothpaste.
And glue.
Glue.
And
glue.
So it's very secretive company.
Yeah, so they do some form of rendering there, for sure, but I can't say that it's the same.
Yes.
Is there any way that either councillors or presidents or whatever could visit a place like that to see actually what is happening there? Like, is there actually an odor? Is there not? It's, you know, I mean, you might have an odor, but it may not be a pungent, you know what I mean? Like, there might be a smell of some kind, but all smells are not bad.
If you're not comparing eggs to eggs,
No.
I don't know what good that would do, though. If
No,
you're not-
Well, if it's
have
fish,
sea
though,
cucumbers.
fish is fish, though.
Well, cucumbers and fishes too. I smelled what Lucian was saying at the,
Yeah.
I've been there picking up vehicles
But
for work and it's,
the smell that you have at the plant, is it because of the guts? It's because of the guts, which is not what's gonna be coming here, right?
No, that's what
This
that's
is what's coming.
absolutely what,
The guts are coming here?
oh, yes. Oh, I don't know.
In a
I
frozen
didn't think
state?
so.
Is it the guts?
it's a byproduct. It's, our understanding was, I don't know if guts is the proper term, but it's a byproduct of the sea cucumber that is not the same smell as what happens at that plant.
Right,
That is what
that's what I mean.
we've been told.
But
Yeah.
it's gonna be frozen.
Frozen in a
And
block.
frozen.
Yeah, well, it's frozen, but once you put that in the boiler,
Correct.
the freezing goes
Quite quick.
quite quick, and if there's a smell, you know, I mean, boiled fish, you smell it.
Yeah. So right now, the agreement has that in, as a substantial point, that company has to address that.
Exactly.
Now, the language could be strengthened, potentially, and that's what we're hearing today, and so we certainly can go back to make sure that the language is strong enough, so that.
And I would like
if
to have more information on the equipment they're using, how it works, if there's any other examples
Yeah.
within reasonable distance of here that we could
Yeah.
get information. Because I can't answer questions that you don't have
Yeah.
the scientific information.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you have new and unique things, you don't necessarily have everything you want to know until the process goes down.
Would the owner be willing to, let's say, meet with the residents of that area and whoever concerned, like your business and whatever, to explain, you know, if that was something that you people would like to have, to hear it from someone who knows more about it than what we know about it, right?
Such a great point.
And that could probably be arranged to have a meeting somewhere, whether it's here or whatever, and have anybody concerned come and to hear what he has to say.
I just wanted to add, I don't know if you guys ever drive by Clyde River in the morning, but if you drive for about a kilometer through Clyde River, there's a meat branch, and the smell is horrendous. And you smell it for a good kilometer. So I'm just worried that if it's just across the road, how far the smell will travel, even though it seems a long distance. Like such a beautiful place to be ashamed to see, that you can't even go outside on your patio or at a brewery, you can't go outside because the smell is so bad. Like,
I see also here there's a place in Mulgrave, Ocean Nutrition Canada Limited.
Oh, yeah.
I know I had some friends that used to work there and that, we still work there, I'm not sure. And they use fish liver oils, refined or concentrated for medicinal use. So I'm not sure if it's anything close to what they're gonna be doing over here, what the procedure is. But I'm definitely gonna contact some of the people in Mulgrave that I know to see if there is, you know, what they think of the operation and if there is odors coming from it, or go from there anyway.
like
Definitely
the
check
meat
in.
branch smell comes in your car.
I know.
You smell it, like
for a long time
Or,
afterwards,
yeah,
yeah.
like, you smell for quite a while.
Councilor LeBlanc?
Don't doubt the Mink Ranch comment. We're super aware of Mink Ranch issues.
Yeah.
We're hoping this is different, more towards, it's a cross between, it's a fish product, however, it's more production restaurant style. It's like we mentioned, it's governed by the CFIA. The product leaving the plant is governed from the CFIA. So right from start to finish, that's a plus. But on the negative side, we're really not comparing apples to apples with,
I have no idea what
no,
cucumber is.
sea cucumber is a very, and I can attest, it's a very unique product. It's different, it's not done everywhere, and it's got its unique issues. So I'm thinking, from what I'm hearing today, I think wording of our contract before anything goes down, we really should be, as I agree, we should have strong wording to make sure that the company is liable if we do have issues. And I do know they're doing testing in Truro. And it's only a little bit of gas to go to Truro for someone from staff or council to witness firsthand, because as much as, like I mentioned, as much as we want to see economic growth, we want to respect our residents as well. So maybe that's something, as well as a meeting with the owner who could explain, be it with residents or even with council, and we can take notes. That would be, I'm sure I can assume that would be easily doable.
If the majority of council agrees with you, the staff will be more than happy to make that trip to figure out exactly what it is. And Mulgrave, we have commitments in Cape Breton next week for conference. Mulgrave is on the way. I mean, we don't want this to be an issue for you. So we'll do what it takes to eliminate as many concerns as we can within reason. I mean, we all know if you're operating, even when you make supper, sometimes smells come out of your property. But so we just obviously we hear your concerns for sure. From a staff perspective, certainly heard it very clear.
I'll try to organize getting someone to Truro with the owner, because I don't know how often they do testing or,
Okay,
right?
great.
I'll try to organize that.
I think he got a question.
Yeah, the only issue that I was scared of is, once they're established there, we can do all the tests that we want before, but once that building's actually there, if that smells unbearable, what are the steps that we're gonna do? Are we gonna stop that plant from operating until that smell goes away, or are we just gonna let it ride?
The answer is if the smell is unbearable, they have not met their obligations under the contract, and therefore they cannot continue operating. That's the advantage of a development agreement versus allowing, there's different ways you allow businesses to operate in the law, in bylaw. The development agreement is a continuous thing. They continuously have to meet it. Whereas when you're doing something what's called as of right, it means that if you meet the obligations at that time, in that moment, you're in, and you tick the box, right? And so that's it, right? So there's no ongoing, unless there's some extreme weird things going on. There's less ongoing monitoring that happens in that circumstance versus this one. So the contract does offer that kind of protection. No contract's perfect, so we have to refine that, and particularly around the concern of smell, we really do have to revisit that piece and make sure we get it right for you.
So it's apparent that this development agreement is going over tonight, which is a good thing. And so we're gonna need some more stronger wording when it comes to addressing the smells. And it sounds like we need more scientific information on how that smell is gonna be mitigated. So what's the next step from here?
So between now and then, so we have, the earliest we could reconvene is at the end of the month, which is committee of the whole. I'm not sure we could get all the information for them, but let's assume that we could. Between now and, I guess, October
30th.
October 30th. Well, we would commit to looking at the wording, working with the owner. We would commit, that's number one. Number two, we'd love to have the owner go visit you, in a place, central place somewhere in Tusket,
The
maybe,
brewery.
maybe a social place, I'm not sure.
The brewery,
Not sure,
yeah.
sure where that might be, I'm not sure, but you could, you know, or wherever, it can be formal or informal, and we can be there or not. So that can be something that you can do on your
Exactly.
own without us.
That's right.
If you feel more comfortable dealing, you know, person to person with the company, that's completely fine by us, we'll be there as a resource if you want us. And then any other, you know, I've heard questions about, you know, smell tests and other things like that, we can investigate further. And so that's what we hope to do by the 30th of October, and if we're not there, there's no obligation for council to make a motion. They make a motion when everybody is satisfied that the contract satisfies your issues, the owner's issues, and our own issues. That's when it gets passed.
If passed.
That's
Yeah,
right.
the motion
That's
can be
right.
defeated.
The motion can
That's
also
right.
be defeated, correct?
Contradicting.
Councillor Dickman?
No, the only thing I was gonna say is, I like how you people are presenting yourselves here this evening. By all means, you're not in here, you know, pounding on tables against it or nothing like that. You just want safeguards in place.
Yeah, I don't wanna discourage any business, it's just, yeah.
Exactly, and you people, I feel as though being there and having residents there, having a business there, you have every right to ask for that. And I know personally, I will be behind that 100%. Like, you know, they're saying that they're gonna come in and have odor and noise mitigation, well, they're gonna have to show us, it's as simple as that. And that, not saying I'm against the business either, because, you know, everybody wants to see business and wants to see growth, but these are, present yourselves very well. Thank you.
You think it's gonna push away other businesses? If that was-
If there were noise or smell issues,
Yeah. Potentially.
it's, the answer is possibly, so it's in our interest as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, yeah, okay, do get one over,
Has the owner presented, like, I don't know what the planning stage is at, but do we know kind of what the construction of this building is gonna look like? How tall it's gonna be?
While I'll have searches for that, I'm just gonna add in, I just contacted the owner and he, sounds like he's more than happy to organize having someone from staff go up to Truro and witness the testing. Don't know who that'll be or how that'll work, but we'll get that done. Guess we'll go up there and sniff around. I wasn't trying to make a stupid joke, it's literally the only way to do it.
Point very much intended.
Yeah.
There is attached to the agreement is a site plan for the proposed location. I don't know, I mean, you can gather from the site plan how big the building
It's a
is.
12th page.
But
Yeah.
the height, I don't have that information here, but I'm sure we can get that information. It's not part of the contract, I don't believe, but I'm sure he has the drawings. It's not supposed to be skyscraper.
He'd
large.
have to meet building code, standards, of course. as a-
Yeah. Best guess is not much larger in terms of height as your own.
Okay.
That would be and again, that's really pushing it on the guest department. Because basically the nature of the business would not require them to have like multi-levels. And so that's,
That's what I was
yeah.
I mean, you know, we talked to you, Alana, about the potential of maybe purchasing a couple more lots in the industrial park and with some plans for, or potential plans for that, so I'm kind of thinking of that as well. And, you know, a big 60-foot building might kind of hinder certain things, you know, aesthetically, so that's more what I was asking.
Was there any, when you built the brewery, was there any requirements for yours?
For the height?
For the height or the width or whatever?
Probably, but we're only a 1.5-story building, so
There was nothing in your agreement that said you
No.
couldn't do?
no. And John, the building inspector, there was no issues with
Okay.
that.
Because it wasn't heavy industry, so
Yeah.
I get you.
they were allowed to operate taste testing brewery as of right, because it was considered to be a very low nuisance operation. So the rules that the brewery followed are different. They're less stringent than this one.
Because it was as of right.
Because they did
Because of
not,
the
because it
nature.
was not heavy industry.
I get you, I
It was
get
an
you.
allowable, activity inside the business park.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm friends with a lot of the residents in the area, and it's probably safe to say, I bet you didn't get much pushback when you said you wanted to open a brewery in that area.
I think everybody's happy.
Councillor Giacomo.
We've talked a lot about the smell, and I do have a little bit of experience when it comes to smell in Lower West Pumlico, my district. I think some of the people here probably, actually 3 of them, have probably had the opportunity to smell the aroma. But I'm also concerned, and we've been talking about smell, but we should also make sure when it comes to noise also, because when it comes to I guess enforcing noise bylaws, I know we've had some problem again in my district. So I hope with a development agreement that we got a lot more teeth in this one than we do with the common bylaw, because the common bylaw that we have for it, for the policy, whatever you want to call it, it's not too, hasn't, proven to be too successful as far as I'm concerned, so,
It is difficult to enforce.
yeah. So that's
There's no
why we
doubt.
might need some strong language there too.
The contract would be less difficult to enforce
Yeah.
than would a noise bylaw.
Just a word of warning.
At least that's the best of my understanding.
Yes.
Because it is a contract that can be rescinded,
Yeah.
and it's a contract between person A and person B being a corporation. And so when you don't, like, if somebody doesn't abide by a contract, it's different than not abiding
Yeah.
by a bylaw.
That's right. That's
I
right.
just don't want it to be he said, she said,
Yep.
between us and the business owner. And I'm not, trying to discourage this, because I'm pro-business in this Bay of Argyle, just a word of caution.
That's right.
It's a balance. We're trying to achieve that balance.
So, is it fair to say you're gonna leave here tonight relatively satisfied until we get more information? Yep.
And if there's any questions, you can always email.
So,
You should adjourn the hearing
yeah,
Yes.
to a subsequent date.
yeah, that's
Right.
what I was gonna ask.
Oh, okay,
Chris,
as
'cause
opposed to
Chris-
closing.
Chris is our Robert's rule.
So you would adjourn and
You can adjourn the public
Can
hearing.
adjourn the public hearing, because there's more information that will be coming from even if the meetings are private, some of that information may come back to here. I would suggest that it be adjourned for the time.
If there's no major changes, you don't require another public hearing. If
Right,
there's no major changes to the development agreement, you
Right.
don't require another public hearing.
and that's another reason to adjourn it, because we would be changing things in this as a result of this public hearing,
Yeah.
which may continue subsequently.
Thank you.
okay, great.
Councillor
Mr.
Gee,
Chair,
before-
just to be sure that if the owner of this business has a meeting with the concerned citizens here, we certainly would want one of staff or one councillor at that meeting to hear what's going on, so we know, not to be picking at anybody, just to know, so we're aware of what the talk was about, and we know what's going on.
Yeah,
No, I'd be happy with somebody there.
Yes, I would feel better then.
And there will be a continuance of this public hearing,
Yes.
so these people may be here, plus other people. And, but we will have more information at that time, is the way I understand.
Official or not official meeting, if I'm around, I can go.
so whatever happens, obviously we'll be bringing it to the public at
Yeah.
the next public.
Again,
If they decide to gather information on their own from the owner, I mean, that's totally up to them. I mean,
Absolutely.
but I mean, it's still gotta come back to the
And
public.
even following an approval by council, the residents or business owners can still appeal to the UARB for a certain period of time after the approval.
Correct.
So,
Explain the UAI part, UARB.
so UARB, to the Leasing Review Board, doesn't manage the process, but there is an appeal period after the development agreement is approved by council that an individual can appeal the decision to the UARB directly, and they would make a decision based on the information that they would receive, which would not involve council as a decision-making process or body.
Thank you. So we'll adjourn this meeting, is that fine with everybody?
So move we adjourn?
Second.